Let's talk about staffing issues for a second here and training your staff to understand what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish financially and getting people to sign up for whatever your service is. How do you guys handle that kind of stuff, or what are your opinions on some of that? Do you have?
Yeah, so staffing is that there's going to be certain levels of turnover in any company. And if you're hiring like a front desk person or someone in that, $10 to $20 an hour range, there is going to be a certain amount of turnover that happens. And I think having a system for hiring, onboarding, and bringing them up to speed, building that at onset, especially when you're not super busy, makes all the sense in the world. Because again, reacting in that kind of scenario and saying, oh, well, now I need this front desk person to answer the phones because I'm busier doing these other things. There's any detail that you do not cover, someone else has to. So when you look at your business that way, that, okay, if I have an opinion about how the phone gets answered, then I gotta have a system to train to that. And the training protocol that I teach, and I've just used a long time in my own businesses, is I'm going to teach you, we're gonna do it together, and then you're gonna teach me.
Okay, beautiful. Really cool.
Yeah, and the reason for that is there's a certain level of accountability and responsibility someone will take whenever they're responsible for teaching somebody else.
Absolutely.
And
I never have really learned a subject until I've had to teach it to someone else.
Yeah, right. And that's the whole point, is to speed that whole process up. So I'll take a day and we're going to sit down, I'm going to explain to you kind of the general concept, here's a script, here's how we answer our phones, so that's all really clear, but that's just the starting point.
Great.
You have not done your job yet.
Cool.
Now we sit down there, we monitor it with them. They do it, we do corrective measures in the middle of the process, right, or right after the process, right? How could we have handled that differently? What's some different options that we could have had with that? And then at the end of that, then they're going to start training me on it. So the way I do this is they're going to start answering the phone, and then I'm going to say, okay, tell me what went great. Tell me what you need to teach yourself how to do better.
Really cool.
Right? And they'll go through and identify, I said this and I didn't do this, and I need to do it this way.
The operations manual is just gold. It's so important to have, and as a piece of your understanding that as a piece of your marketing plan, any piece of your business that comes in contact with a client can be considered part of your marketing. Mm-hmm. And how you answer the phone, how you greet people at the door, how your classes are being taught, all of those things are therefore, in my opinion, a piece of that marketing. We redo our operations manual quite frequently. Matter of fact, that was our focus this last month, was to go over that again. And then another thing that I think that we do really well at our studio that I have rarely seen at other studios is the amount of role play that we do. We generally do role play at every single staff meeting. And the instructors know how to answer the phone if for some reason they have to do that. The front desk and the instructors both know how to close the deal because we've role played those things. And if you're going to make mistakes and you're going to learn, I'd rather you learn role playing and make the mistakes there than on a customer that how you present yourself to that person has an impact on my business. Right?
Absolutely. So
and
I agree.
And so that's a huge thing, and people are generally resistant to the idea of role playing. If you want to work here, we're just going to get used to it, and that's kind of the attitude that we have. And the other thing that I think is really important, you talked about that, the role playing from the very beginning in the training scenario. If you bring people in and that's just the culture that they inherit, then it's just not a problem.
Yeah.
They're just used to it. Everybody's doing it. The guys who have been there for 10 years are doing it. The guys who have been there for 10 days are doing it. And everybody's always doing it.
Instilling these things as a culture. So some of this goes back to values. What do you value as a business owner? If one of the things you value as a business owner is improvement, then what you have to do is you have to inculcate that culture to everybody, is you have to set up a system for improvement. So if we're going to get better at closing deals or about communicating with our customers, is there time set aside where we as a group practice that? Do we take those opportunities and make it a priority? If it doesn't get scheduled, don't expect your people to go home and practice it in front of the mirror.
Absolutely.
They're just not going to do it.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned a second ago accountability as well. Tracking your results. What can be tracked can be managed. And if you are just assuming that your front desk staff is effectively signing up appointments or closing a deal with people or whatever it happens to be, and not actually looking at the numbers and giving feedback, it's tough a year down the road after you've hired somebody to go back to them and say, oh, by the way, you're not doing as well as I thought you would. Now we have to make some changes. And so the idea of, you train the person, you get them to know what they're doing, you consistently role play throughout the time, and then you track the results. Is making this different in wording on the phone increasing the number of people who are signing up for appointments? Is this new offer that we're giving to people making a difference? And looking at those and then detaching yourself emotionally from that idea and saying, hey, this idea didn't work, or hey, this idea did work. Tracking those results, I think, is really good for employee morale. If you go in and you tell somebody, you say, hey, we want everybody to make this change, they're like, yeah, this change is stupid, and then you don't show them the increase in results that they're getting from it, they're going to stick with the idea that this idea is stupid, even though it's a benefit to the business. So I think reporting to your staff in front of everybody, what's working and what's not working, and having the numbers to back it up is an extremely powerful management tool that they have a really hard time feeling bad about making changes because they can see the improvement in actual numbers.
Yeah, and that all that does is improve your credibility as the business owner and your leadership. If you're willing to be transparent about the times when you said, hey, we're going to make this change, and it got a worse result, therefore we're going back. What that does is that communicates a value towards improvement, and it doesn't need to be my idea. It doesn't need to be your idea, but
there's going to be accountability.
There's going to be accountability, and the goal is to win.
Yeah.
That's our goal. That's our value, is we want to be great at what we do. We want to be excellent at it. So whose idea it is, don't care.
Yeah.
What we care is, does the best idea win? And do we have a way that we value that, track that, prove that, talk about it, and then improve upon even that?
I think I'm probably attributing to the wrong person, but I think Ford said, you'd be surprised what you can get done when you don't care who gets the credit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another piece of that as well. I part of my management technique also is to come up with an idea and then find a way for the staff to think that it was their idea and allow them to run with it instead of me just constantly telling them.
Being a top-down hierarchy type deal.
Once you have them there in a few staff meetings, they're role-playing, they're seeing results, they're able to develop those ideas themselves, and they're much more likely to follow through on that if that's the case. So.
One thing that I just got into a habit a long time ago of is whenever we're talking about any kind of celebratory thing, if we're talking about what we achieved as a group, I'm using that word. I'm using we. If I'm talking about a screw up, most of the time I'm saying I.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm going to own, as the owner, this is my domain. So at some level, either consciously or unconsciously, I am intentioning the results that happen here. If I step into that belief system, that changes how I view what happens here. All of a sudden, I can't be the victim of my staff. And my staff can't be the victim of me, right? I'm getting away from this idea that I don't have the control of what occurs in here, right? And a lot of business owners, when we start talking about mindset, they will view themselves as even being the victims of the very people that they're really entrusted to help and support. And
that internal locus of control, if there is something out there that you genuinely do not have control over, why are we bothering with that thing anyway? I mean, that vision, it was just down the board, and whatever it is, the more internal idea that I have, the internal locus of control over whatever my situation is, the more successful I will be in that thing. Whether that's learning to play tennis or market or run a dance studio, or as a student believing that they have control over improving and making more progress. If they believe that they are personally responsible, they just simply will be more successful.
Yeah, they will. You can't blame your way to success.
Yeah.
What you have to do is you have to say, okay, this is my canvas. So how am I going to paint my picture? If we can just operate from the perspective that I can really kind of paint this however I want it to, right? Even if that's not true. I'm not even going to ask you to believe that. But if you just step into that and say, well, what if? What if it was true that I could paint this picture any way I wanted? What would it look like? You'll be surprised about how close you could bring it to that. Even if it's not an identical picture, how close you can, far greater than what many business owners will give themselves credit for.
Really awesome.